The King, Richard Petty, will say goodbye.
Jeff Gordon, who will be making his first start here today.
Davey Allison is in the prize.
And now it's going to come down to two. Will it be Alan Kulwicki or Bill Elliot?
Today, at this racetrack, an entire chapter of NASCAR history will be written. Just 12 days ago, America turned the page on its own history book. Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton is the first member of the baby boomer generation ever elected President of the United States. The time of Ronald Reagan and Richard Petty is coming to an end. NASCAR will soon have a whole new generation of young drivers, led by rookie sensation Jeff Gordon.
Congratulations.
In November of 1992, the country decides its new leader, and NASCAR determines its champion. It will all happen here at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
And to see so many things come together at Atlanta Motor Speedway on one day.
There was 4 or 5 different storylines to that particular race that year at Atlanta.
It is the final race in the 35-year career of a NASCAR legend.
That was the end of that particular segment of my life.
And it's the first Cup race of a young hot shoe from Indiana.
Right time, you know, Rick Hendrick calls, and I knew that's where I wanted to be right away.
I haven't seen that kind of talent in a young driver before.
We're not only going to go and sit on the pole in our first race, we're just going to blister the track record. It's going to be so fast, it's going to be ridiculous.
It is also the culmination of one of the closest championship battles that NASCAR will ever see.
It was all about personalities. How different was Bill Elliot from Alan Kulwicki, from Davey Allison?
And I really feel like we have the best team in Winston Cup racing right now.
This is our time to go, you know, overcome something.
I've never been through anything like it in my life.
Davey Allison's season has come to an end.
Every pit stop, we'd have to push him out of the stall to help him get going. So all these things that happened for a reason. For some reason, they didn't keep us from winning.
There's the checkered flag for Allen. He's the champion for 92.
That race ate my guts for a long time. Winning the race was one thing, but we lost the championship. But it was meant to be. It was his time to win that championship.
It was a change in times, which it should change. It's not for eternity, you know?
Randleman, North Carolina, the headquarters of Petty Enterprises. By 1992, the best days of the organization are long past, and Richard Petty wants to end his driving career gracefully.
The fan appreciation tour had come up, you know, the year before.
It will be my last year next year, and it will be known as a fan appreciation tour.
My year was spent really going around and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey, buddy. That's Richard Petty. This is Matthew.
Give me 5.
Daddy's big thing is fans. It's all about the fan. So some people said, well, you're just doing this to make money and all that. But, you know, Daddy really wanted to reach out and to give something back to the fans. And I think that all the opportunities that he gave the fans to come up and personally touch him or sign an autograph, just to say thank you.
I'd never seen that many crowds around someone in my life. I still today, you know, when I see a crowd coming, I usually figure it's Richard, you know, heading our way.
That was a hard year for him personally. All he wanted to do was drive a race car. The only peace he had during that year was when he was sitting behind the wheel on a Sunday afternoon. The rest of the time, there were concerts with Alabama, there were autograph sessions. Everywhere he went, it was a big deal for that city.
There was always a pre-race ceremony. The King was always involved in it. We had everybody from the star drivers to the President of the United States, giving them something.
Richard, I'm proud to be at your side.
He always told me, he said, you need a 27-year-old Richard Petty. I think he knew where he was at. There were certain tracks he felt really comfortable on, because still felt like he could get the job done and win. But other tracks probably didn't feel so comfortable with.
I'd done my thing in racing. I was on the downhill drag. We wasn't really being that competitive, running that good. I got to gracefully get out of this deal here, you know, and I don't want to just quit.
We knew how much he wanted to do it, and we knew the end was in sight, and we just kept praying that he could make it to Atlanta.
The King's last race will be covered by a sports network eager to tell the story right. The 90s are already good for NASCAR, and good for its television partners.
By 1992, an event that had so many characteristics, they went all out to try to do whatever they could, not only to make themselves look good, but also to make the sport look good.
Obviously, we had plenty of meetings, but, you know, with Bob, Benny, and Ned in the booth, and Jerry and John.
We here at ESPN very proud to bring you this final race of the 1992 season as we wrap things up.
They were so pumped about it, but because they're true race fans anyway.
Benny Parsons and I think we were in hog heaven that day.
And man, that's exciting. Have 6 drivers that are in the championship hunt in the last race of the season, and Richard Petty retiring at the same time.
Ken Martin was in the booth, and he and still is a stats guru and a historian. He already had the scenarios figured out on what would happen if this happened, what would happen if that happened.
I had built a computer spreadsheet with each driver's points coming into the race, and then what their points would be for each position as they run.
Kenny Martin was one of the best statisticians in the sport. I mean, he certainly was a real friend to those of us in the booth.
We finally have a championship that all the drivers have to run as hard as they can go. Don't you think, Ned?
Oh, yeah, they got to go for the win.
We are entering one of the most exciting races ever in Winston Cup racing.
You go into that atmosphere, and you've got one of the favorite sons that Georgia has ever had in Bill Elliot. And where are you at? You're in Atlanta, Georgia. We've already fought all the battles. Now this is for the war.
Davey Allison is grateful for what he has achieved and resigned to his racing fate.
We're very fortunate to be in the position that we're in right now with everything that's happened. We're enjoying life. We've learned a lot this year, both as a team and personally, and no matter what happens, we can walk out of 1992 holding our heads up high and knowing that we overcame a lot of obstacles and a lot of adversity.
Alan Kulwicki enjoys the role that he has played for the entire season. The underdog.
You know, it's just a little bit out of our control. I think we have a good chance. A lot of things can happen. But we've got to beat Davey by more than 1 or 2 positions. We've got to beat him by 5 or 6.
There were 3 real players going into that race. But mathematically, there were 6 players. You've got to add Kyle Petty, Harry Gant, Mark Martin. 6 teams, 6 drivers going into Atlanta that could mathematically walk away with the championship.
If you talk to any of us, we felt like that those 3 guys had to crash on the first lap. And if they crashed on the first lap, then it was Katie Bar to the door.
In the years leading up to this race, superstars had left the sport. Bobby Allison, Benny Parsons, Buddy Baker, Cale Yarborough, obviously Richard Petty retiring. The sport needed new heroes to step up.
One new hero came to NASCAR from the most unlikely of places, the short tracks of Wisconsin.
When he finally decided that he was going to NASCAR, he just sold everything that he had up here, and he packed up his truck, and he was always a person who had goals. And so his goal was to not only compete in NASCAR, but really to end up winning a championship.
I was swimming for my life when I moved down here. I wasn't thinking about the championship. I just wanted to compete on the NASCAR circuit. I wanted to get a ride. I wanted to be one of the drivers on the circuit. There weren't any rides for me. There weren't any opportunities. So I went about trying to create one for myself by owning my own team.
Trying to win a championship as an owner-driver makes Kulwicki a throwback to the early days. But he also brings a new approach to NASCAR.
You know, Alan was probably the one guy that started bringing the engineering side into NASCAR. That was his goal, was to make sure that NASCAR went that direction.
I tell guys today, he set race cars up with 4 grain scales on a 4-foot level in a tape measure. Grain scales. You can't even go to a grain place now and find a grain scales.
And him being an engineer, man, he was driven.
He was a control freak. He would ride you until you wanted to just quit. And you'd get mad because we can't do any better, but you say to yourself, oh yeah, watch this. Well, I'm gonna prove it to him. And that was his way of getting more out of you. And I always call us a bunch of misfit toys, because that's what we were. We were just a bunch of misfits. And we beat them powerhouses.
But it is Alan Kulwicki winning the inaugural Checker 500.
To celebrate his first win in Cup, Kulwicki tips his hat to his heritage and circles the track backwards. His first Polish victory lap.
That victory lap there is something I had thought about for a long time, and I wanted to do something special and never be another first win, and I just wanted them to give them something to remember me by.
Ford Motor Company wanted Alan to come to the Budweiser race team. I walked Alan through our race shop and spent about a half a day with him. And he said, Brewer, you have no idea how much I would love to come here and drive the car and race. But he said, Brewer, I have to do it myself.
At this very moment.
Today, in Atlanta, Alan Kulwicki is in position to fulfill his lifelong dream. But other drivers have the same dream, and only one will win the championship.
Davey, you are in the lead heading in here to the last race. How you holding up, buddy?
I'll tell you, John, right now I'm just incredibly nervous. I don't think I've ever been this nervous in my life.
Not only a championship at stake here today, but perhaps as important, it's the final race for a guy who started his career back in 1958 and has become the king of stock car racing. It's Richard Petty's final ride.
Petty, start your engine.
10-4, buddy.